Hi Brooke, it's Katelyn. I hope you're having a good weekend and that Christmas is going to be awesome for you and your family. Let's talk about these before we leave for holiday break. First of all, my first piece of advice would be to get a macro lens because you're never. I mean, this is a great up close shot, um, and it's beautiful. But if you really want to excel in macro, you got to have a macro lens, and because it's just what it's made for. Other lenses besides macro are not meant to shoot tiny objects up close, and you can get with a wide lens you can get pretty close to some things, but a macro lens is how you really master ring shots. But even when you have a macro lens, there's still some things that you need to know. So, I actually did a blog post about this almost 2 years ago, but I just redid it for Zach and Jody Gray's blog. So if you Google like Zach and Jody Gray, Katelyn James ring shots, that blog post should come up, and I share a lot of secrets about how I shoot ring shots and how I get them to be crystal clear. And one of those tips is you always want to make sure that your focal point, your AF point, is on one of the prongs, preferably the one that's closest to you. So right here, this is a great image as far as lighting, but when you look at it, the focus is right here. So the focus, this part is blurry, and when you look at a ring, the first thing you look for is the big diamond. So you want to make sure that you're focusing right on the prongs, and I can't really zoom into this because it's not high res, which that's totally fine. But if I zoomed into this all the way, you'd be able to tell that these prongs are hazy and this is in focus. So if you focus on the prongs, you're going to notice an immediate difference in your images. But then again, it's hard to focus on that when you don't have a macro lens. So a macro lens may want to be on the wish list. Something about composition would be, oh, there we go. Well, it's still kind of blurry. I would crop in and get rid of the line of the table or the windowsill, wherever you're shooting this on, because it's distracting. So that is a much cleaner, easier image to look at than what we were dealing with before. So let me just show you really quickly the example. So I can show you what that's, and eventually you'll get to a place where you shoot and crop in camera. You crop this in camera like that. If you get rid of that line, it's all of a sudden you delete one major distraction in the image and it becomes more of a professional looking shot. So to me that looks a lot cleaner, a lot more professional than this line. So that's one thing to think about. When you're looking here, one, you're a little bit far away from the stone, and so you might want to practice getting a little bit closer, but if you're not using macro, you might not be able to get closer, so I understand. Um, Also, make sure that you are shooting um, with great light. So if you're in the shadows and there's not a lot of available light, and I'm not saying putting it in the bright sunlight because that's not going to work either, but make sure you have a lot of available light so that you don't have to fight to make it bright. So right now you're shooting at 2.8 with a 35 millimeter lens, or at 35 millimeters, and your ISO is pretty low. So you're doing everything right, but I think your struggle is that you're not using a macro lens. I have a 35 millimeter lens, and you can get just about this close, and that's it. So I would definitely look into a macro lens because you want to be able to shoot really close and get really crisp images. And I never got those until I had a macro. So I don't know if you use Canon or not, but the 100 millimeter 2.8 macro lens is amazing. I really love it, so I highly recommend it. And that would allow you to improve your images dramatically because you're going to be able to shoot, let's see, you'll be able to shoot an image like this, that close, no problem. And that's another thing is, if you wanted to just improve this image with composition, I would pull the ring shot over to this quadrant, to this little area. Because right now, without that, let's see, there's really not a lot of work going into the composition here. Sure, there's line kind of coming this way, and the ring is dead center, but there's nothing artsy about it, I guess. So if you move this over and off-center it just a little bit, I think that really improves the image quality. So something to think about. And for here, I love that it's something different and that you're thinking outside of the box. I think that's great. I don't know. I can't tell from the image what this girl looks like, but I'm guessing she's heavier set. If she's not heavier set, then this probably isn't the best, most flattering pose because all you see are the areas of her body that she's probably not um, that proud of. And what I mean by that is, we see her chest and we see the bottom of her chin, but you don't see any facial structure. You don't see her eyes. Another thing to think about is that he looks a lot smaller than her here. So you can see him, you can see his face, you can see a little bit of his jawline, but the angle of her is probably not the most flattering. And I know you're just, you're still learning, and that's totally okay. But just think about it from a perspective of, how can I make her look the most flattering? Not how can I get the most amazing, be totally different with my images, but how can I make this couple look awesome? And how can I make them really happy with the way I pose them? And for this image, she could love this image, and that's great. But if you wanted to improve, I would make sure that maybe her head isn't turned towards the right side. You should be able to see her profile as well, because right now I have no idea what she looks like. I just know that she's large chested and has a wide chin, and it could be that that's not even what she really looks like. It's just the angle that I have right now. So, let's think about it as if you saw that picture of yourself, would you be happy with that? And would you think that's a flattering take on the way that you look? I think he looks great because you can tell that he has facial features and stuff like that. But just think about from the bride's perspective, or just the girl's perspective. Something I would be aware of also is because the sun is right behind his head, that's why you have so much lens flare. Some people love lens flare, and that's fine. Like, lens flare is really cool, but it's very hard to control. So you got lucky that it wasn't covering up his eye or anything like that. But a lot of people would say that you need to get rid of this because you lost all the detail in his face. And some people would say that this is distracting. I tend to think that it's a personal preference. I don't shoot with this type of light, and so this would be something very different for me. And I don't want to critique it if that's something that you really love. So, lens flare is just a matter of preference. So you just remember that when you're listening to this. It's all about what you like. If you meant to have lens flare, then I say, okay, then keep learning how to handle lens flare. If you didn't mean to, then I would say continue to learn how to handle light, because accidental lens flares aren't always the most attractive type of lens flares. So let me talk really quick about posing. When you're posing a couple, I totally understand that it is hard to make them interact and to be natural and to seem genuine in their pictures. And it's a huge art form for photographers to be able to pose their couples in a way they look like themselves. To me, this is a cute shot, and you're right, not a lot of photographers will shoot from underneath because that's not a normal way to pose someone, because from underneath, most people have double chins and it's not flattering on their face. So this is artsy and it is different, but I would focus more on how to make your couples feel emotionally connected to you and to the shoot. So I'm just going to pull up something really quick, just for an example. So let's look at some of these recent shoots. I'm going to show you. Let's show you this one because Morgan is the guy, Lauren's the girl. He wasn't really thrilled about being there. And so I started out from a distance, so I wasn't right up in his face. And then I told him just to get together and nose to nose, get really close. And I want you to squeeze his arm just as tight as you possibly can. All right, you should look ridiculous. And that's what I say to her, because you need to give them permission to act a little bit silly, or else they're never going to know that's okay. So I shoot far away, and then I gradually get closer as the shoot goes on, so I'm not scaring them. So by the time we're at this door, I can get them to interact and be cute and lovey-dovey because he's getting used to me, okay? And another thing to think about is, I keep people in a certain place for a few poses. So I did a shot far away, I did a shot in close, then I told her to look at me, and then I told her to hug him. And then we moved on, but I got 4 shots out of it. So we're shooting in front of a door here, and I have her do her cute little thing. And I tell her, you should feel ridiculous. You're laughing at me for no reason. And Morgan, you're going to laugh at her. And I just tell them in advance, like, you should feel kind of silly. And if you don't feel silly, then you're not doing it right. So if you, reassure them that, like, this isn't normal. You don't normally take pictures on the side of a street. And so you just got to trust me that it's going to look good. Then they start to, to be themselves. And you start to get images that really look genuine. So give them permission to have fun, give them permission to, be models and stuff like that. So, when I'm looking at these, I'm trying to think of it really takes confidence on your end to make them feel comfortable and to make them interact really well. And it also takes practice. So, um, I don't give up. It gets easier. It really does. And I think that as you continue to shoot, I would make it a goal every single shoot that you do, like for an engagement session or a portrait session, is try one new pose and then make that pose evolve into another pose. And so eventually you'll be shooting in a way that you have a posing evolution of poses that just keep coming and you never have an awkward moment where you don't know what to tell them to do next. And so I hope that's helpful. This is a super fun picture. I don't hear me criticizing the fact that it's not a great angle. Just know that it's a great creative shot. There are just ways that you can improve it, and I think you should definitely put a macro list on your wish list. So I hope you have a great Christmas and a happy New Year. Bye.